Welcome to Event Experience by Bezos, the podcast where we bring the best and brightest event experience leaders together to share stories, tips, and lessons learned from creating some of the world's biggest events. I'm Rachel Moore, your podcast host. Every event planner wants their experiences to get that 5-star rating, and there's a reason for that: the power of reviews. In this episode of the pod, Ankush Gupta, founder of Eventible, highlights the importance of social proof and reputation to event success. As we dig into the realities of our review-based economy, Ankush shares easy ways eventprofs can establish social proof, embrace both positive and negative reviews, and help new conferences establish great reputation. It's all coming up now on Event Experience. Our guest today touts a 20-plus year career in marketing, event production, product marketing, and marketing tech. And today, he's bringing his very well-rounded wealth of experience to our podcast. He is the founder of Eventible, the world's first B2B event reviews platform. I'm delighted to welcome Ankush Gupta to the pod. Ankush, thank you so much for joining us across microphones today.
Thanks, Rachel. Really excited to be here and have this chat with you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I delight when I think we all know the power of reviews and recommendations and kind of that social proof that's out there. And when it comes to events, I think this is going to be a super interesting topic for our listeners. And I gave you a very high level introduction, but I want to turn it back over to you. I want to ask you some get to know you questions. We ask all of our guests these questions. I love these. All right. So on the occasion when you are at an event and you need to be on the ground all day, what are your go-to event day shoes?
Hey, I think that's a good one. I'm partial to what I call dad shoes these days at my present age, which is a pair of New Balance 574s. I think they're super comfortable. I can be on my feet. I can walk all day without being exhausted. So the 574s, yeah.
I love it. I just take notes all the time. Every time I go shoe shopping now too, I keep these in mind because I'm like, maybe, because we all have those days, might be an event, might be just a day where you're walking all day and you're like, what makes sense? And excellent recommendation there. Is there anything that you are listening to, watching, or reading these days that you can't put down?
I think that's probably going to be the same as everyone else. Netflix, The Gentleman. I don't know if you've seen that by Guy Ritchie. I thought that was pretty mad. So get a look at that if you can. And I've recently read this book called Magic Words. It's by a Wharton professor by the name of Jonah Berger. And he's really talking about the use of language and how it can really help you get what you want out of different situations. Very fascinating and extremely, extremely applicable to event marketing and for event profs, especially in all the communication that they have to do and put out. I would highly recommend getting a copy of this.
Excellent. Love those recommendations. And is there a particular social post or a piece of media or even a hot take about events that you found interesting lately?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a few weeks back, I came across this little video on somewhere on social media about Sam Altman, CEO at OpenAI. That's the firm that makes ChatGPT. And he was talking about different things. And, he said that we are now coming into a part of the world where we are going to be so inundated by AI generated content that really finding the space for making those human to human connections is going to become more and more precious. And I take it is that he was simply talking about conferences, events, right? Because those exactly are venues which are tailor made for human to human interaction. And that's what it's all about, right? So in a sense, I think that we're going to be entering really the golden age or the golden era of conferences, right? Which will now become more and more important than they ever were.
Which makes Eventible really important because that's where people are going to be reviewing all of these conferences, right?
I sure hope so, yeah.
Love it. Yeah. Could you please tell us more about what it means to be the founder of Eventible and kind of what your world looks like with that role?
So like a lot of other first-time startup founders, we ended up being incubated, during the pandemic. For some reason, I think, it left people with a lot of introspection. A lot of people were thinking if they should move on with their jobs or, start with ideas that they've already had. And I was one of those people that really wanted to pursue a couple of ideas that I'd been building up until that point. And, my idea essentially was, why doesn't a review platform for business conferences exist?
Mm-hmm.
Especially seeing how prevalent platforms like a G2.com or a trustradius.com had become for the SaaS space. And it struck me as being a little weird that a platform didn't exist where potential attendees, speakers, sponsors could make participation decisions or investment decisions in conferences based on peer insights, based on reviews left behind by people for previous editions. And everybody just had to go with what event organizers were saying. And most event marketers will always say, they're putting on the world's best show. That's something that we really wanted to take a shot at. And even more so because I firmly believe that we now live in a review economy. You're literally followed around by these little 5 stars every time you flag an Uber or you purchase something on Amazon, or perhaps you've looked up a hotel review on TripAdvisor, or some of our listeners would have used Glassdoor. Essentially, what used to be, I feel, word of mouth for our parents is now an online review for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we wanted to do, was to bring conferences kicking and screaming into the review economy.
I love that you touch on that. And you actually kind of covered a question I wanted to ask you, because this does all drive back to social proof and reputation. You're completely right. Marketers, I'm a marketer. You have marketing in your background, and a lot of our event people listening to this, our listeners, work in marketing events. They're a marketing channel for brands. And we will say, and as we should, we're like, we are the best. We have this. You will get this from us. But the proof's in the pudding, as they say, is what do the actual attendees think? What do the people who had that experience think? Did they get what they were promised? Which leads to that social proof and reputation. I love that you mentioned we're in, what was that? You said a review-based economy?
Yeah, we are in a review economy, so to speak. It's all around us. I mean, we're often doing it subconsciously. We're not even thinking that you're being asked to consume a review or leave a review for so many things that happen in your lives daily.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about that. I want everyone listening to this too. Think about the normal purchasing decisions you make on a day-to-day basis. You are probably going to go seek out, I mean, look at like influencer economy right now. If you see somebody and you kind of trust what they say, or even a friend or a colleague or an acquaintance, and you're like, well, it worked for you, that's why I'm going to go try that thing. That same thing applies to the humans who are making decisions about how they're going to invest in which conferences they're going to attend, which trade shows they're going to exhibit at, and things like that. So I'd like to get into this too. I think event planners listening to this are probably like, okay, so how do I do that? I'd love to ask you that, Ankush. What are the easier ways, and maybe not the easier ways too, that event profs can establish and demonstrate social proof and their event reputation if they don't have that yet?
That's a good question. And the easy way out is what everybody's already been used to taking, especially in the events industry and the B2B event space. If you talk about easy ways to leverage social proof, I would say, a few things come to mind. For example, event profs have been leveraging the social media channels. They've been posting on social. They've been encouraging their speakers and, some of the attendees to post on social media. The other thing that they can do and they have been doing is to share speaker endorsements, to share about who's speaking and how much they love speaking at a conference, to share perhaps event pictures. That's an easy one. I mean, you can just take a bunch of pictures and share them on whatever social media channels you have. And some of them have also been displaying attendee numbers on an event landing page, saying, oh, we expect 500 people this year, and last year we had so many people come. So these are all really simple ways that event profs have been trying to display social proof. And that's what I think. And social proof is such a fundamental construct of marketing, and you can't just do away with it. There's always an easy way of doing it. There's always a better way of doing it.
Yeah. Do you find too, I mean, in particular, if we're talking about B2B, and let's think about what you just said about social. I mean, automatically we're like, oh, LinkedIn. We want to make sure we're peppering LinkedIn with social posts that cover everything you just mentioned, where our speakers are talking about it. We're showing attendees, experiences, we're showing the pictures. So we're not just telling you that people were there and enjoying themselves. We actually have pictures of people smiling and having a great experience. Do you think like that's the most sensible platform, or are there other platforms that event profs should be thinking of, particularly if we're talking about B2B events?
I think what event profs should be thinking about more is that, sharing it anywhere is fine. You can share it on Twitter, you can share it on LinkedIn, on Instagram. But really, they have to start thinking about whether them sharing it is the most beneficial thing that prospective attendees really want to listen to. I mean, would you rather that your prospective attendees, sponsors really had you sort of tooting your own horn? Or would you rather that they get their information from somewhere else and they see how cool your event was and how much your attendees loved you? So it's a little bit of shift in mindset that's probably required on the part of some of the event profs.
You bring up a great point there. It just kind of covers too what we've already mentioned. It's one thing if the event themselves, and every event planner is going to do this, every event marketer is going to do this. Of course, you're going to gather all that information and put out marketing about from your own channels, from your own accounts, that your event was great. And that's the reason people should join. I'd love to ask you about this. So, how much more powerful is it though when you get an unbidden, unsolicited review or commentary from someone? It's not from the person or the brand that put on the event, but it's from someone who attended. They are sharing their own perspective. That carries a lot more weight then, right? Than the brand itself saying this was awesome.
Well, of course, I would just ask the event profs, I would ask the folks listening in to look at their own experiences as you're sort of going about your day to day things. You're taking a holiday somewhere and you want to look up hotel reviews. You'd probably go to TripAdvisor. It's less likely you'd go to the hotel site and then want to read reviews and think, oh my God, how credible is this? I'm going to book it straight away. But on TripAdvisor, it starts feeling more credible.
Mm-hmm.
You think that there are other people who were sharing their experiences. It's a community of people, and you sort of start believing that those are authentic reviews, and that's something that helps you make up your mind.
That seems to like a exactly right. And I can even speak from experience. I just had an opportunity to travel to New York in the last couple of weeks, and I chose a hotel based on Google reviews. I was like, I want to see pictures. I want to see what people are saying about it. I want to learn how walkable it is. Sight unseen, I need to be able to at least take some other people's experiences and make my decision. And it wound up turning out great. I think I made the right decision. We all want to make the right decision, especially when we're paying money for experience.
When it comes to conferences, you're not only paying money, you're making the commitment to take time away from your families in your jobs, perhaps to travel to a new city, make all of those hotel bookings, and you want to get it all right. And what's going to help you in getting all of this right and what's going to help your decision making is having the benefit of what people who went before you to a previous edition give their unfiltered views on what they experienced and what they saw and sort of what they felt.
I think we've kind of covered maybe the low hanging fruit, the easier ways that a lot of our event marketers are probably already doing. Like, yep, we're totally sharing on social. We're even asking our people who attend the conference, please go tag the hashtag, tag our brand on your social post when you post about this event. They're encouraging that. That's low hanging fruit. Are there more difficult ways, though, a little bit more challenging and maybe requiring more resources, energy, and even money that these event planners and event marketers can be establishing social proof?
Of course, I think some event profs can perhaps create case studies, around particular attendees, sponsors, with the measurable outcomes that were achieved. That requires a whole lot of more work than just taking a bunch of pictures and sticking them onto LinkedIn or Instagram. So, that's one of the things where you can say, oh, for this group of people, this is what we did. This worked out very well. So case studies is one thing. Secondly, they could be engaging on platforms like Eventable. We're a review platform. We are custom built from the ground up for exactly this sort of thing. But that requires a little shift in mindset. You have to learn to take the bad along with the good. So even if there's a negative review that comes in, you can't just wish it away, because having that negative review with some positive reviews makes you look more authentic. No event is going to be flawless. No conference, no trade show, no webinar. Nothing is really ever going to be so flawless without a single mistake, assuming you've done your best. And you have to let your attendees share what they really thought, what they really experienced. And therein lies the beauty of the authenticity, right? Which is where other people who will be able to see that these reviews are genuine, that these are people who walked to this conference before us and really make up their minds.
Excellent point. And this is something I hope our listeners are really taking note here too. This doesn't just apply to events, but just generally to when you get feedback or reviews that may not be glowing, right? We all love when we get 5 out of 5 stars. Everybody loves everything. But we know, we live in reality. It's impossible to make everyone exactly happy all the time. If you could expound on that a little bit, when an event planner or event marketer or their team does see someone has either left a review on Eventable or they've made a social post that could range from being very negative to just saying, oh, it was good, except, for these things that I didn't like. How do they approach that? What's your best guidance for how to approach negative reviews?
So we've thought about it a lot, obviously. And I'll start with a little story. There's an old clip on YouTube about Jeff Bezos at the early days of Amazon talking to a bunch of media reporters about books and book reviews, because that's how Amazon got its start, by becoming a marketplace for books, as you know. And a bunch of people sitting in the audience, and one guy picks up the mic and asks Mr. Bezos, why do you have negative reviews? Why do you allow negative reviews for the books? What if there were only positive reviews? Wouldn't that make us buy more books? And Mr. Bezos says, no, you need the negative reviews over there. I would never do away with the negative reviews. It helps the potential buyers make a more informed decision, and then they get to make up their own minds, right? And this is a guy in like 1999 or 2000. And this is what he's saying about book reviews and reviews in general, that you do need to have the negative reviews over there. And I think it's even more important, Rachel, in today's times when we are inundated by fake reviews and so many AI generated reviews. Like you mentioned, you looked at Google reviews for a recent trip to New York. What if all of those Google reviews were just glowing and positive and like 500 positive reviews? Now your brain would tell you there's something off about this. There's something wrong. This looks a little dodgy. So when the negative reviews come in, you get a sense that, oh, it's a little balanced. Some people maybe didn't enjoy it. Some people enjoyed it. And then you can sort of read the two and, sort of start making up your mind. So we've thought about it. We give Eventprofs the tools to deal with this by replying to the reviews. They're able to reply and say, oh, if you have a problem, you can talk to us. But thank you for sharing. And by doing that, publicly on a platform, in addition to being authentic, they're able to show that they care. They care about their attendees. They're able to show that they care what their attendees are telling them, which sometimes in a closed survey mechanism, it's not really swap at.
We'll be right back with more event experience after the break.
Hey, event professionals, let's face it, venting won't fix outdated, overpriced event management software that lacks the support and features you need. But Bizabow's Event Experience Operating System will. Say goodbye to your frustrating legacy event software and hello to building more events that matter. Visit bizabow.com, that's bizzabo.com, to learn more about the Event Experience OS, interactive Click Smart Badge, and more.
We're back with Ankush Gupta and a look at our current world of leaving reviews.
The whole thing is really it's a shift in mindset. Mm-hmm. Event marketers are also marketers, and at some level they know the importance of reviews, because they're living pretty much the same way we all are. They're being asked to provide reviews for the Deliveroos and the food delivery apps and the Ubers and the Amazons. They're reading reviews all day long. Yeah. But when it comes to their own little babies, their conferences, they suddenly get very possessive, and they have to realize that just like everything else, and you have to give that conference a chance to be reviewed publicly. And that's really when the magic starts happening. That's when the flywheel starts spinning and more people say, oh, this looks like a cool thing. Mm-hmm. I think I would like to attend this, because it's very important to understand that most people don't have a structured way to find conferences. And that's, one of the problems that we came across. If I was to ask someone across the room, hey, you're a designer, what are the top 5 conferences you want to go to this year? Nobody ever seems to have an answer for that. Right? People make up their minds by looking at stuff that falls into the social media feeds. People make up their minds during water cooler conversations. Sometimes somebody sees an advertisement by a large event and says, oh, Michelle Obama is going to be the keynote speaker. I got to go for that. But no one really has a process and a structure. And we are actually trying to change some of those things. Mm-hmm. So the way that we are set up, you can come in and in a couple of minutes, you can say, I want to network, I want to learn something new. And our platform will sort of recommend the best conferences for you based on, of course, reviews.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that too. I can also attest. I'm sharing all the anecdotes about myself today, y'all, but I've done that. I think I did that earlier this year. And I Google searched. I was like, okay, what are the top marketing B2B conferences I should try to look at attending? And a couple of the, usual suspects popped up, like Inbound or Content Marketing World or things like that. But then I'm like, yeah, but knowing too there's this whole other aspect too. If the people behind marketing a conference are doing their job, they're probably doing some growth strategy. They're probably paying for Google ads. So when someone like me enters a Google search, their stuff is going to pop up to the surface on page one. And that's great. I'm probably going to go see their website and stuff like that. I love what you're sharing though, because people today, and I think particularly if we're talking about Gen Z and things like that, they will go deeper. They will go ask Reddit. They will go search for, instead of searching for which conference should I attend or which the best conference, they'll say reviews about X conference. And that's where the discoverability part, I think that you're bringing up too about what Eventable provides. I think that absolutely does seem to like it meets a need that has been out there for when people are deciding what conferences to go to.
Yeah, it's very difficult to make that choice. And I've spoken to like tons of people. Nobody seems to have had any kind of process to find conferences. Most would do exactly what you're doing, do a Google search for a list of conferences, and then hope that it's going to be something good.
Yeah.
So we are trying to take the guesswork out of that. And the way that we are set up, the way our algorithms are set up, we can even sort of look at the reviews and look at what people are actually saying. Are people saying they were happy with the networking? Are people saying that, they learn new stuff? They're able to generate new ideas for their workplaces. And using those inputs, we're able to then recommend them to people who want to go network at a conference or who want to go learn something new. Right. So we are trying to make it more helpful all the time. And it's the same for event profs. I think we've recently kicked in with a feature which tells event profs who is reading these reviews. On the flip side, so the people reading reviews, so event profs can now see who's reading the reviews, and they can potentially hit them up and say, hey, do you want to come to the next conference? Because if somebody's reading the reviews, you can bet that they're interested in
Yeah, light bulbs just went off there. I just talked about people doing growth campaigns and stuff, and that's some really good information and insights to have there to optimize your targeting strategy. Excellent. I want to ask you, what about brand new conferences? I mean, we've got some, in events. I'm not talking just about conferences, but anything like trade shows or anything like that. But what if there's a brand new, a company is trying to say, we're going to kick off this thing. It's the first year out. You don't have any social proof. You're creating something new from scratch. It's a brand new experience. Nobody's been to this before. Everybody's going to be taking a chance on attending and investing and going. Do you have some advice there too? Like how can the event planners and marketers behind that kind of new event, how can they try out the gate to say, hey, let's establish some social proof before we've even had the event?
If you're new, and like with everything else that's new, it's always going to be an uphill task, and you have to fight your battles. But what I would say to the new conference brands out there is that skip the tired old stuff and just get your conference onto Eventable, get the social proof coming in, and start competing with the bigger conference brands, because it gives you a level playing field, right? If you go to like a g2.com, which is a review platform for SaaS, you'll see, mostly the first page is made up of all the big guys, the HubSpots and the Marketos, right? Because, they're literally spending the most on marketing and branding and, pulling in like hundreds and hundreds of reviews. But sometimes there's a new guy, there's a gem, that people are starting to get excited about, that really comes, zooms up the charts and is right there, right? So it is possible, but you have to be there. You have to get your attendees and your speakers to provide those reviews.
Yeah.
And the sooner you do it, the sooner you will see the flywheel effect kick in.
I think too, you mentioned this earlier, just a normal way that people can establish that social proof is utilizing your speakers. People are already going, they're they're bred into the DNA of that event. They have a stake in it for themselves. If there's someone who they're not directly working for your brand, they're partnering with you basically to be in the event. But they could be as well, because they will have experience with that event. And say again, like a speaker, if you've got a keynote speaker for your event, really enticing them. I know we've actually had, I think one of our prior podcast guests had said that should be something baked into the contract for speakers, where it's not an option to go share about the event on their social. It's a must do. Like that's part of enlisting them as a speaker, saying, and one of your duties as our speaker for this event is you're going to share this out on your social, which I think is a great idea.
It is a great idea. I think, speakers are such important components for an event. People are attracted by the programming and the agendas that they see. Speakers, very often tend to pull in the crowd, right? And good speakers can make an event into something more.
Mm-hmm.
So, if the event organizers can convince them to be more active on social media and probably equip them with all the tools that they need, a little design, give them a little graphic and say, hey, I've done it for you. Just go and put it out there on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So things like that, I think it can be very helpful.
Excellent. And then finally, one really easy question, the easiest question of all.
Mhm.
Where can our listeners find and follow you online?
Yeah, that's simple. Just go to LinkedIn, put Ankush, put Eventable. I'll pop up, connect with me, say hi. Love to meet you. Always love meeting new people, listening to the stories, just as you do, Rachel.
In this episode's Skill Up, Ankush's words remind us that everything doesn't have to be complicated.
Keep it simple, stupid is the best thing that I can really tell anyone. Don't complicate, don't overcomplicate things. Event profs, for example, they stress about so many things. And we see the reviews on our platform, on a day in, day out basis. And people are really talking about the simplest things, the Wi-Fi, the coffee, the food, the spaces to network. I mean, these are the things that you have complete control over.
Yeah.
So just focus on the simple things and everything else will fall into place.
Thanks again to Ankush Gupta for joining us on Event Experience. And thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love to hear it. Connect with us on social and subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you're listening. Also, don't forget to share the show with your colleagues and friends. You can find transcripts of each episode and key takeaways on bizzabo.com/podcast. On behalf of the team, thank you. We'll gather again soon for a new episode of Event Experience.